Welcome to the Dr. Mudgil podcast. This is one that I've been really, really excited about, man. And I got Sam Fribush here, who's just a killer organ player. I mean, you're a multi-instrumentalist, but organ I think is your main joint, I would say, yeah?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so Sam is down in North Carolina, is in Greensboro, and it's one of these like social media stories. I actually saw a little post that charliehunter had on his page, and it was on his Instagram story. I think it was like a little clip of you guys playing like the stomp and buck dance or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow. I was like, this. First of all, I rarely see charliehunter actually playing a guitar, so that was cool.
Yeah,
and then
six string.
It was so grooving. And then I just kind of went down the rabbit hole of checking out your page, and you guys have a YouTube video of that tune. I think it was one of the outtakes of that tune, which I've literally been binging on all week. I downloaded your albums. Like you just came out with an album where you're the headliner, and it's a double album, which is just literally the best shit ever. Like organtrio is by far my favorite genre.
Awesome.
And there's not a lot of new music in that in organtrio stuff. And when I happened upon your stuff, man, we reached out on Instagram, we connected this, and I just can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your Sunday, man, to be here with me, man, on my podcast.
Oh man, my pleasure, bro. My pleasure. I appreciate all the love and support, man. That's awesome that you're digging the music.
Yeah, it's funny. I literally I obsess over things. So I eat the same meals all the time, like literally every day. I listen to the same music like over and over again. Like all morning today, I started listening to Lonely Like Me. I was just kind of going through your album, and I've not stopped listening to it. Like just over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it's just it's so good, man. The album is just so great, man.
I appreciate that. That's awesome, man.
And so the selection, I kind of want to get into your backstory and all that stuff, but since we're talking about the album, I mean, the selection of tunes you guys have for this album, it's like this crazy, like eclectic mix of like just the most soulful songs.
Mm-hmm.
How do you put that together? Like, how do you decide like what tunes you're gonna play?
Me and Charlie spent a couple weeks before the session doing a bunch of pre-production, just jamming together. I probably had a list of like 40 songs, man. And we just kept narrowing them down, and coming up with arrangements that felt unique to us, unique to me, my style of playing, my background. And Charlie, of course, brought so many cool songs that I had never really heard. And that was the big thing about having him as a producer, was he kind of was like, oh, nah, that's not really working, or let's have you checked out this tune, and so on and so forth. But like you said, the repertoire that we picked for these records is really unique, and there's a lot of hidden gems on there, songs that we cover and do our own thing with, that if you go back and listen to the original, you might be like, wow, I never heard this song, I love this song,
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of that. So the other night I was listening to Let's Give Him Something to Talk About, which is that Bonnie Raitt tune, and I go to a date night with my wife on Thursdays. We go for like an early dinner. We have 3 kids, so we meet like 5:30, and we'll drink a little wine or whatever. Get home by like 7, hanging with the kids. And I was listening to it in my office. So I was like signing my notes for the day, like for the patients I saw. And I was listening to it, and again, I was just like listening to it over and over and over again. And then I kind of segued from the wine into some scotch, and I was like really kind of getting real heavy into the music. And so I actually I took a screenshot and I DM'd it to Charlie, and we just ended up like kind of going like back and forth. I mean, it's so good. It's just the grooves are like so deep, and it's just I mean, there's so many layers to it. Like every time you hear it, it's like there's something else to kind of grab, and it's amazing that it's just a trio.
Yeah,
and that's what I love about the organ. I feel like it captures emotion so well. Like it captures happiness, it captures sadness, it captures just groove. Like sometimes you can't stop moving because it's just so groovy, and it's really the only instrument that does that. It's just such it's such an amazing instrument. It's so complex and so deep. And when did you actually start? I imagine you probably started playing piano. When did that kind of segue into like organ?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's very true that the organ is a super dynamic instrument. It's very soulful. I mean, that combined with the Leslie, I mean, you go right to heaven when that thing starts spinning. I got into the organ. I played a lot in blues bands in high school, and I would just play my Nord keyboard, but mostly organ stuff. And like you said, I was primarily a pianist up until then. And I don't know. I guess it was all. I always had an affinity for it. I always loved the sound and the feel of it. I grew up going to New Orleans as a lot as a kid, and a bunch of the clubs down there had Hammonds, and I would see guys that I idolized playing the Hammond. And then in college, I found one on Craigslist, and my dad helped me out with it. We moved it here in my studio, and that just kind of just bloomed from there because you can't really practice Hammond with the foot pedals and all that uh, unless you have one, you know.
Right.
So
There's
it
not a
was,
lot of them.
yeah, and it was actually getting one that kind of just took it from there, and then I went back to going to school in Boston at the time at the New England Conservatory of Music, and I ended up kind of sneaking into some classes at Berklee College of Music because there was no Hammond at the conservatory. So I had some friends who would take me over to Berkeley, and I started taking classes with this legendary gospel musician named Dennis Montgomery III. And from there, it just kind of kept growing, and I knew that it was something that was unique.
So you were taking like B3 lessons at Berkeley?
So Dennis had a class where he would it was a gospel organ technique class, and he had some exercises that there was like probably 5 or 6 Hammonds in the room. It was one room at Berkeley, probably one room in all of Berkeley, all of Boston that had that many Hammond organs in it, and we'd just go and he'd play and you'd play a little bit for him, um, and then those lessons actually got me a gig at a church in Massachusetts, and they had a Hammond organ, so that twice a week I would go play the Hammond at the church.
Oh, that's crazy, man. That's amazing. But Berkeley is just such a a powerhouse of musicians and just resources, man. I mean, that's wild.
Yeah, it was very cool. I mean, would run into issues all the time at the conservatory because they had one Hammond, but it was all the way in the basement, and they really like the guys who moved the shit really never wanted to take it out because it was such a pain in the ass, and like they had these
Right.
small elevators and stuff. And so I was always jumping through hoops to try to use the Hammond at the conservatory. And at Berkeley, I wasn't even enrolled there. I would just sit in on the class.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I guess just taking it back and just kind of learning about your process and how you just evolved as a musician. Your parents are both musicians, right?
Yeah, yep. My dad is a jazz clarinetist, and among other things, actually, they're both folk musicians. They moved to North Carolina in the '70s, kind of during this folk revival of the Appalachian old time music, and so I grew up with music, deep, folk music around me all the time.
They're professional musicians. That's what they do as their career.
They both have my dad was a professional musician, but he's always done a lot of different other things. Um, right now, actually, he's in the medical field. He does testing, so he's been doing some COVID testing, and then my mom is uh a visual artist.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So, and so you guys, so you grew up like was when you were a kid? Does it just start with like piano lessons? Like, how did you
Yeah.
start?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I started, from very young. I think I got my first drum set when I was 5 years old. Shortly after, I was taking piano lessons at 7. And at 8, I linked up with this guy named Tracy Thornton, who was actually a steel pan player in the area. And I just kind of became obsessed with the idea of playing the steel drum. So from the age of 8 to 13, that's primarily what I did with keyboard on the side. I had a little steel pan trio with my best friend who played the drums and a bass player, and we were kind of, these little kids playing some cool music. So we did pretty well in our region, and people kind of dug it. And then, I joke around like that was the height of my career when I was 11 years old.
So you were pretty advanced. I mean, as a young child, you were pretty advanced musically. I mean, imagine like in school, you were like the best musician. Like they kind of probably pulled you out of class and
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it just came from environment. Growing up, my dad is kind of musicologist of sorts. So just having those records around me all the time.
Hmm.
And then in high school, I did go to a performing arts high school, and we were on a block schedule there. And we, so for an hour and a half a day, I had a keyboard in front of me. And that's actually where I think I got a lot of my technique together, which helped me, to get into the conservatory and kind of move on to that next level. But I still don't read music very well. Um, I really come from that school of just self-taught kind of folk music.
Hmm. Really? Like I was thinking, as like a piano player, like every keyboardist I know can read music like a mofo. Yeah, I'm a guitar player. I
Yeah.
can read music, but not very well.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, maybe it's not like I didn't try. I mean, I can read music, but I just never put enough energy into
Right.
being able to get that stuff together.
S- So you always sounds like you always knew that you were going to be a musician. From a young age, like that was the career path that you were on.
Yeah, I really don't. I really haven't had any plan Bs or don't think I had another option, man. I got a lot of shit in me, you
So you
know.
when you so when you went to Boston, like what was that like compared to like going to a performing arts high school? Like was it just
Oh
how
man,
was
I got my ass kicked. Man, Greensboro's kind of a small town, um, and like you said, it was just like I just grew up playing all the time and kind of being that guy. And then when I got to Boston, I was at the New England Conservatory and just surrounded by kids my age who were Grammy band jazz artists and a lot of kids from your neck of the woods who were, I mean, just prodigies, unbelievable musicians. So um, I was humbled very quickly.
and do you guys like jam together? I mean, it's just such a fertile ground for like being a
Yeah.
musician.
Yeah, I mean, it's very intense, man. It's the conservatory particularly is like you'd walk down the hallway and you'd hear these, I mean, just monstrous music, a lot of classical stuff. A lot, I mean, people be it just virtuosic stuff coming out of practice rooms. And so I spent a lot of time alone just trying to get my shit together. Um
Predominantly jazz. Was that your main focus?
Yeah, I was a contemporary improvisation major, which is a kind of a unique program. It's a crossover between classical and jazz. It's called Third Stream. It was started by this Gunther Schuler and taken over by Rand Blake, and it was why I ended up going to the conservatory because it was a very like kind of international. A unique program with not just focusing on jazz. I mean, a lot of universities offer just jazz studies, and the conservatory had this kind of weird middle ground program.
Wow. So did you feel like I mean, I guess it's hard. Did it take your playing to like a whole nother level? Because I imagine you were very advanced when you came when you got there.
Oh man, yeah, no, not at all. I didn't was not advanced when I got there, and I definitely think that those 4 years I spent helped me a lot for sure.
And, and you just graduated like 3 years ago. I guess 3.5 years ago, right?
Ye-
2017.
yep, yeah, I graduated in spring of 2017.
So then what happens? Like, so how do you start like making money, like having a life as a musician?
So I spent a lot of summers afterwards working pretty heavily in wedding bands in the area. Um, New England is kind of a destination wedding area, so we did pretty well, and that was really fun because there were so many great musicians in Boston, and the wedding bands were a crossover between all whoever was around, graduated students, Berkeley students, NEC students. So we had a lot of fun doing that. We'd travel all over the area almost every weekend, and that was good money. And then I'd play church, which I was telling you about on
Yeah.
Sunday mornings. So that I was just kind of a weekend warrior, man. I'd play sometimes a wedding on Friday, almost always a wedding on Saturday till 2 or 3 in the morning, and then drive, maybe get a couple hours of sleep, wake up and play Sunday morning, and
Wow.
then just take it easy. And I had a couple students during the week, and um, yeah, I mean, as far as I can remember, that was the routine. But it worked,
Yeah.
for a while.
And then you how long were you in Boston for after you graduated?
I was there. I want to say at least through the summer of 2018. So it was a solid year after I
Gotcha.
graduated. Yeah.
And then you moved to New Orleans after that?
Yeah, and then I moved to New Orleans that fall. Um, I just kind of was done with the cold and the college town and was ready for a change. And I had some really strong roots in New Orleans. My uncle lived there. My brother was going to school there. I've been going there since I was a kid, and I just thought it was time. Most of my friends were moving to New York City, and I just didn't want to do that. So I made the plunge.
And so how long did it take you to get integrated into the New Orleans music scene? Did you already have gigs lined up when you went down there, or you had to start from scratch?
No, I got a church gig down there pretty much off the bat, which was really really helpful, just to bring some income in and to meet some great musicians in the scene. Actually, that the first year that I moved to New Orleans, I was at played at Jazz Fest uh, in the gospel tent with my church band,
Oh,
and
wow.
actually in the jazz tent with this group that I um, joined when I moved there called the Swamp Donkeys, led by James Williams, the trumpet player in New Orleans. So I just got lucky that I kind of, New Orleans is a very, you get to sit in a lot,
Yeah.
and you sit in and you be cool, and stuff starts to happen.
Yeah, I love New Orleans, man. I went to college in Atlanta. I went to Emory. We used to go down to New Orleans all the time. So we used to go to Jazz
Yeah.
Fest every year, and it was just the best, man. It's just such a great town for music.
Oh, absolutely.
It's interesting. I think Melvin Seals plays, or you probably know. You're probably very familiar with him. I
Yeah.
think Jerry Garcia found him because he was playing for like a church in San Francisco or something like that.
Oh, yeah. That sounds. I don't know the exact story, but
Yeah,
it sounds exactly right.
yeah. So I guess the
Absolutely.
church is like a big thing for organ players, man. It's a fertile ground.
Absolutely, 100%. It's not to be overlooked. I mean, the Black Church has had an Hammond organ for
Yeah.
a long time, and some of the best organists in the world grew up in that.
So are there like standard tunes or like, because a lot of it's improvisation too, right? When you're playing like a organ in the church band, like you're kind of just backing the pastor up a little bit.
Oh yeah, there's a vast repertoire, but yeah, one of the things I always talk about why I love it so much is that it's very intense improvisation. It's one of the deepest improvising experiences that I'm still involved with now, because it's just so quick moving. You're always on your toes, always on your feet. You're switching between keys all the time, and it's taken me a long time just to be able to keep up with it, because I didn't grow up in the church, and yeah, it's very cool, very awesome. Um, but that's one of the things that I think I was attracted to from the beginning, because I love to improvise, and that is kind of the root of church music for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, you can hear it. You can just hear it in your playing too, man. You basically taking us to church throughout the whole album.
Cool.
So obviously COVID, you're back in North Carolina.
Yep.
Everyone's world kind of shut down, and a lot of folks retreated to their home base just to get through this crazy time. Does Charlie live in Greensboro?
Yeah, man. He lives 5 minutes away from me. He moved here a couple years back, and I had been hearing these rumors. Hey, Charlie Hunter moved to Greensboro, blah blah blah. I was like, okay, cool, that's awesome. But I never would have expected that this whole COVID situation would have brought us together, and we're very close now, and so it's very cool thing.
So how did it happen, man? Like, how did you guys connect?
Um, I There's a young group here in town, called Reliably Bad, and their guitar player is a friend of mine. We also play old time fiddle music together, and him and Charlie had been working together on, because he's a guitar player, so Charlie had been helping him out a little bit, and he told Charlie, "Hey, you got to come meet my friends, the Fribush brothers." So Charlie came over to our spot and started jamming with us, and it was at this time where Charlie, at the beginning of COVID, he was getting really into playing drums.
Yeah, I saw this. He's posted on Instagram a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, he's become an amazing drummer, and it's all kind of like taken shape over the last 10 months or so. So it started with him playing drums and me playing organ, and Jimmy playing guitar and my brother playing saxophone. So we just, excuse me, we would just jam, a couple times a week, and that's where it started, and to the point where you know um, it's kind of like, so when Charlie asked me to play guitar, when he said he would play guitar on the organtrio record, I was like, yes, that's great, because playing guitar with him is just amazing. I mean, it opens up. I just
Yeah.
feel like I can go anywhere with that.
I've listened to Charlie Hunt. I listened to Charlie like back in like the 90s. I used to I was like super into it. He had like that one reggae album that
Yeah,
I
not to
got like
dread.
super into.
Yeah.
And I've actually never heard him play guitar. Like actually, I mean, like on Instagram, he would post every now and then, but it was it wasn't like I've never heard him play like a long format, like like a whole tune. And he's a really fucking good guitar player, man. He's
Oh,
really good.
it's insane. I mean, yeah, I think that is it's kind of crazy. I mean, it's a very unique point about this record, marketing point, and interesting that it's Charlie Hunter on 6-string guitar, regular old 6-string guitar,
Yeah.
and like you said, it's very rare. He very rarely does that, and he just plays his butt off. I mean,
Oh, it's so good.
and to him, he's just saying, "Oh man, this is so fun. This is so easy. I don't even have to think," because he's usually playing that crazy hybrid.
Yeah.
The other unique thing that kind of happened was we ended up cutting 2 songs from from Voodoo, D'Angelo's record.
Yeah.
We recorded Spanish Joint and The Root,
Yeah.
which to those who don't know, Charlie plays on those original recordings. He plays hybrid on the original recording of Spanish Joint, and he's a co-writer on The Root. He actually wrote most of that song besides the lyrics. So, and that just the way that happened was very organic. We weren't even planning to cut The Root. We just kind of were jamming on it at the recording session, and the first take is what you hear.
Wow.
But it's been very cool because that's kind of like, Charlie doesn't really talk about D'Angelo or that whole experience very much. So it's brought a little bit of life back into that, that record that came out, Voodoo, 21 years ago is changed the game for a lot of musicians. I mean, it's an iconic record for my generation. So it's just I kind of pinch myself. It's really a dream come true. It's hard to even fathom that Charlie was on that session, and here he is just hanging out and playing music with me. It's very cool, man.
Yeah, he's an OG, man. That album is great. There's a version that D'Angelo does of Cruisin'. It's like this live version,
Yeah.
That's one of the songs I literally would obsess over. I'd like probably listen to that on repeat for I don't know, months on end. It's just he's so good. It's just so soulful. It's so good. So let's kind of get into the album a little bit, man. So
Sure.
So you guys were basically, I mean, it must be amazing for Charlie to have amazing musicians in town. It's like, you guys, it just lends itself, especially this time where everyone's basically not doing anything. No one's on the road.
Yeah.
And really kind of lended itself to just, this project.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to kind of get into like how you guys actually picked these songs.
Sure.
So you said you had like a list of 50 tunes. What's the process? So like you guys, because all of these recordings are like old school recordings. You guys are just all playing together, right? They're not tracks.
Yeah. There's no overdubbing. There was no splicing. I mean, it's all live tapes. I mean, we maybe did. If it after 3 takes, we're moving on.
Wow.
Yeah.
So talk to me how you run through this. How do you get from like 40 songs? I think there's what you got seven tunes on Riverboat and there's 8 tunes on The Root, right?
Yep. How basically we just for about a week. It really wasn't that long. I was just in kind of like obsessive pre-production mode. I had 3 or 4 different playlists going on Spotify. You know, just trying to narrow down, you know, what I wanted. Um, and it's a very complicated, interesting thing because it's like it's representing you and your sound.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing about making a cover record. But what I did know was that it was going to be an organ trio, which makes everything kind of unique. And even more so, I had Charlie on my, you know, who was going to help me arrange this stuff. So, you know, there were certain things we knew we wanted to have, you know, some shuffles. We knew that we wanted a swing tune, we wanted a boogaloo groove, we wanted a New Orleans street beat, we wanted you know, a ballad or two, you know. So these are the kind of things that we just started narrowing it down, you know, and that's how it took shape. And then I don't think any of us were expecting that the session to go as well as it did. I mean, we did it in 2 days, and you know, there's basically nothing that we cut
It's amazing.
from the release. I mean, it was like we were just all so locked in and having so much fun, and the music and the vibe was so good, it didn't make sense to be like, that doesn't make it, you know. It's pretty unique.
So what about one of my all-time favorite tunes is that Billy Preston tune you guys have on here?
Oh,
Which
yeah.
it's such a grooving song.
Yeah.
But you put 3 versions of. There's like 3 versions of it on the album. There's like, you know, the
Yeah.
I guess the real take, and then there's like 2, I guess, outtakes. But they're also different. Like they're like drastically different versions of the same song.
Yeah, man. That is really interesting how that happened, because we did it as a couple. The first original idea was to do it as a shuffle, which is the first take. So it's Billy Preston's "We'll Go Around in a Circle" in a shuffle with a shuffle vibe, and then the other 2 takes that you hear on there were just outtakes of jam. I mean, if there was anything that wasn't going to make the record, it was going to be those. Actually, we left the session being like, okay, those are a little too just kind of wild. But after listening back when we were doing post-production, we were like, wow, these kind of have a vibe, you know? And the rest of the record is very kind of, you know, there's some really nice ballads on there and some cinematic stuff, and those 2 tunes kind of bring back some energy, you know? So that's why we threw them back on there. And I think they both kind of started with geoffclapp, the drummer, just playing a groove. He just kind of was like, hey, check this out. And we just jumped in off of that.
Yeah, he's a beast, man. He's so good. It's like it's so in the pocket, man. All you guys, all 3 of you guys are just so in the pocket. But he's a local guy. He's a local Greensboro guy.
He's from here, yeah. He's from this area. I had never met him before. He actually lived in New Orleans for a long time and was a heavy staple of the community down in New Orleans. He's well known and respected, and worked with some great New Orleans drummers. And so he actually recently just moved to Texas with his girlfriend, which is kind of sad because he's not around anymore, but it's cool. And so when he came into town for the holidays, that's when we made the record. But he's currently not around right now.
So he came up to, I guess, visit his family, and then you guys picked him up for the record, huh?
Yeah. You know, I said, hey man, when you coming up? Oh, I'm gonna be here, blah, 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 blah. I said, all right, well, you want to come in the studio with me and Charlie? He said, hell yeah.
That's awesome, man. Wow.
Yeah.
So it looks like, I mean, those outtakes you have on YouTube, are those, that's the actual studio where you guys recorded it?
Yep.
So it looks like a living room, man. It looks like you guys are like in someone's living room.
Yeah, we are. It's a home studio in High Point, North Carolina. Stephen Price was the engineer, and man, we mixed the 2 on the spot, which means that basically all the mixing was recorded down to a single track, you know, on the second day, or basically as we were going, Stephen was mixing. But I mean, the whole process was just so streamlined, and he has a beautiful warm Neve console, and like you said, we were all in the same room. And it was, Steven's incredible. So, and his wife, Kate, was the one who shot all the videos.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's like And we did all, like I said, we did all this in 2 days. Recorded 16 tracks and a music video and some B-roll footage. So I wish I had a little bit more footage to share with everyone, but you know, that's just how it goes. And so we're just trying to cut it up and stretch it out a little bit.
How loud is it to get in that room?
Oh, I mean, it's not very loud. I mean, the loudest thing is the drums. Charlie was cranking it at times. He was playing this old 1966 Mustang, Fender Mustang, which was pretty sweet. And
that wasn't an Epiphone.
Yeah, the Epiphone was the main guitar he was using. The hollow body Epiphone was Grant Green style, and then but for some of kind of the funkier stuff, he jumped on the Mustang.
Which tunes was he using that on?
A lot of those Will It Go Round outtakes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and on Stompin' Buck Dance.
Okay.
And maybe a couple more, I can't remember. And the Leslie was just on the other side of this isolation booth, but it wasn't completely isolated. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't very, very loud in the room, actually. Like I said, the drums were the loudest thing.
Do you guys all have the same mix in your headphones?
No, we could control our headphone mix. We can control our headphone mix a little bit.
Was that little console that's in front of you guys, like on the video? There's like this little gray console that each of you guys have.
Yep. And then there's a microphone in front of me, which was like my talkback microphone, just to communicate to the guy. I don't think I barely used it. And those guys are just so they're just pros, man. They're veterans, and they just.
Sorry, man. Sorry to cut you off. On that YouTube video, it's like an outtake of Stompin' Buck Dance.
Yeah.
It's at the very end of the song, and you guys are like, that's actually not on the album. That version of it is not on the album, right?
Correct. Yep. That's just a live version that we, at the end of the session.
Charlie was playing that Epiphone in that version, right? Where he pops the string, he pops his B string.
Yep.
So at the end of the tune, you got, you're basically ending the tune, and you're on the 1, which was I think the song's like B flat minor or something like that, and then you call out the 4, and then Charlie's doing whatever is run on there. Then I forget what the next chord was, and then you go like this. You put your hand up.
Yeah.
Because you guys hit on the 1 5 times to end the song.
Yeah.
But it's cool. I love seeing that stuff in video because it's amazing because it's when you're listening to it, if you're just listening to the audio, it just sounds like, okay, these guys, that's what they rehearsed and that's what they're doing to end it.
Yeah.
But when you actually see the video, you see that's actually happening in real time. And as a guitar player, Charlie's runs are insane, it's just so cool to see that all happening on the fly,
Yeah.
I'd imagine the whole album was like that.
Oh man, yeah. I appreciate you digging it, man. Exactly. I mean, we for the sake of that video, like you said, it's not the recording that's on the record. So that was just we were like, okay, we just want to take one live video. Let's pick a tune. So we just launched into that. And yeah, man, I just have a very improvising spirit, and so do those guys. I mean, we were just we stayed very loose. I mean, you can hear that all over the record. I mean, it's very loose. It's not perfected. It's not clean. It's just 3 guys in a room making music.
That's just what's so beautiful about it, man. When I was in college, I took there was a jazz class that we all took, and it was an amazing class. And I always loved jazz. I always loved music. I kind of grew up really into the Dead, and I love classic rock, and I got really sort of into jazz towards the end of high school. But I remember the jazz teacher, he would give us songs that we'd have to listen to, So one of the songs was The Sermon. This is Jimmy Smith. This was Jimmy Smith, Art Blakey, and Kenny Burrell, and a whole bunch of other amazing artists. And it's for folks who aren't familiar, it's literally a 20-minute long song. It's just this never-ending song, which is so good though. Everyone takes a bunch of verses for the solo. It's just incredible. And I really got obsessed with the organ after that. I got obsessed with Jimmy Smith, then Dr. Lonnie Smith, and being in New York on Tuesday nights. There's a place called Smoke. I'm sure you've probably been there, on the Upper West Side of the city. And actually they had an organ night. So Tuesdays was organ night, and you'd go for happy hour, and then you could stay through the night. And it was Peter Bernstein on guitar and all these amazing organ players.
Yeah.
And it just, there's just something about organ trio that really just hits you in the soul, man. It just really just hits you, and what's amazing about it, and I think this album captures it so well. It's three musicians, but like the interplay between the musicians and just like that actual instrumentation with the organ, because you're covering all the bass and just like it's just so the depth of it is just it's amazing. And then the tone that Charlie's tone was like really very Grant Greenish, just kind of cutting through, the warmth of the organ, and then the drummer is just it's so good, man. It's just so fucking good.
Yeah,
I love it.
I mean, you're nailing it. You're nailing it. It's I love this that interacting with those just two other musicians. I mean, it's so deep. You can really just listen and lock in with when it's only that many musicians. And coming from a folk background, for me, it just feels like I'm at it, just in the living room jamming some some folk music, some Moroccan music, some old time music, whatever it is. It's just like it's very just kind of earthy and soulful.
So any of these tunes, did you have to like learn any of them? Like like say like Jeff or Charlie, like, hey man, let's give him something to talk about. Like you would never think of that as like an organ song, like
Yeah, that one. I knew that I wanted to have a cover that that people would kind of recognize. So that's that tune for us on this record. Also, Bonnie Raitt's a good friend of Charlie's, and it's a great
really?
tune. Yeah, it's a great tune, and we kind of put like a classic organ feel on it, which is the boogaloo ride cymbals thing.
And you don't even know what it is in the beginning, because basically there's like a little vamp in the beginning of that song.
Yeah.
And then like it starts the head, and even like the beginning of the head, you're like, okay, and then like you hear it, you actually hear it in like that, like the second part of like that, the first line, you can kind of place a little bit, but there's like one particular part of like the first verse where like, oh yeah, that's what this song is,
Yeah. Awesome, dude. Yeah, I remember there was a couple melodies that I was working out in the studio, just making sure that I had we did this Switch tune called There'll Never Be, and Switch is an old kind of underground funk band led by Bobby DeBarge. His brother went on later to form the group DeBarge.
Yeah, El DeBarge,
yeah. So There'll Never Be, I remember Charlie was supposed to play the melody on the verse, and then in the studio we switched it. So I spent maybe 10 minutes making sure I knew the melody. But like I said, I spent about a week preparing, just making sure that I was in a good place to play at a high level.
Yeah, because you really had to know these songs inside and out, and like just some of them, I mean, they're all it becomes very complex. Like the arrangements actually, even though they're like a simple like rock tune, for instance, but it's not that. It's like the arrangements are really complex, and when there's one particular song that I was obsessing on this morning, was that Gap Band tune?
Yeah, Lonely Like Me.
Yeah, Lonely Like Me. So that I love that because Charlie plays like the verse, but you pick up the bridge, like when you guys are playing through the head. How do you guys decide that? Like, does it just happen organically, or are you like, okay, you take the verse, I'll take the bridge, and then we'll go into the solos,
Yeah, I gotta be honest, dude. It was very organic and just extremely. Charlie is extremely musical, and there's no second guessing and weird dynamic. It was just like, yeah, that sounds good. Boom, boom, boom. Kept moving like that,
So it was that easy, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting moment where kind of the stars aligned. Working with Steven at his studio, getting Jeff to play drums, the mindset that Jeff was in, he was in a really good place. Charlie, me, the organ trio, the repertoire, all those things, I really feel like were just kind of fell into place at a good time.
Do you guys think, like, once COVID is over, that there might be like a live version of this, like a road version?
I would love that. I would love to take it on the road. I think both these guys would be down, but they're also, almost twice my age and have families and stuff. And so we'll see what happens, man. I enjoy being a sideman and freelancing and playing with other artists too. So um, I'm just ready to get out there and play for people in whatever
Yeah.
capacity.
Are you doing a lot of studio stuff now? Like, recording parts and things like that, or I guess remote production of music?
Yeah, yep. That's primarily what we're doing now. Doing a lot of producing and engineering and recording parts for people and um, working on some of our own music. Yep.
Is your brother like a professional musician as well?
Yes,
Is-
yeah. And my younger brother, his name's Eli. He plays the saxophone, and he's a great producer as well. And so we kind of run a small, production label here where we work with different artists in the area. We probably work with half a different artist, and make music for them and record them here and write with them. And so we stay pretty busy doing that.
That's great, man. It's good to be busy in these times, man. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are able to keep busy.
Yeah, I feel very lucky for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. So what in terms of like finding this? So I downloaded it from your website. You can go to the samfribush.com and you can download the album. Is it going to be on Spotify or some of the streaming stuff?
Yeah, yeah, actually, just working that stuff out now, but it looks like the official release date for all streaming services will be March 5th.
Oh wow. So how
Yeah.
does that work? How do you even get it on there?
We're going through a distribution site called The Orchard that Charlie is linked with, and I did a bunch of data entry. I mean, everything we've done is with this record has just been extremely DIY. I mean, luckily,
Yeah.
Charlie has over 90,000 followers on Instagram, so that is helpful. But there's no record label, there's no, PR or marketing or anything. We're just putting this thing out there. I'm still a young cat, and
Yeah.
it's all good. So the distribution company will get the products out to Apple Music and Spotify and all that stuff.
That's awesome. I just dumped those WAV files into my Apple Music, man. That's how I listen to it.
Perfect. And it'll be up on Bandcamp as well.
Cool.
For next Friday, which is they're waiving the fees, so I'm getting up there before then.
Oh, that's great, man. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I mean, I gotta anyone who loves jazz, who loves organ trio stuff. I mean, I just got to check out this album, man. It's a real throwback, but with a modern twist. I guess that's the best way to say it. But you guys are like really just old souls, man. I mean, really, just this thing could have been recorded in like the '60s.
Oh man, cool. I dig it. Appreciate
Yeah,
that.
but so where can folks find you, man? Where should people find you, man?
Yeah, like you said, samfribush.com is great, man. It's that is my current website, and I'm gonna keep it updated. It's pretty new, so go check that out. There's some cool stuff on there. You can check out my YouTube page, which has the live video of the session, a couple other cool things on there, and Facebook and Instagram. My Instagram is fly_fry, as in Fribush, FRI, and yeah, just pushing this thing pretty hard, trying to make as much sales as we can before it goes live on the streaming services, and then I'll get back to just kind of jamming on there and having some fun.
Yeah, I love it, man. We're definitely gonna do our part to get the word out, man. People need to hear this album. It's really really incredible.
Thank you, man.
Just one last thing, man, before I let you go. So a big sort of theme of my podcast and sort of my platform in general is, hustling and grinding towards goals and like the empowerment that you get with that, and but what a lot of folks see is the finished product. So like folks will listen to this album and be like, wow, this is amazing. But the like probably the 100,000 hours of effort and practice and stuff that you did to be able to perform at such a high level with such an exceptional group of musicians. And for you, it's probably, you would love playing music, obviously, but there's also a lot of hard work that has to go into that. I'm sure there were many times in your life where it was a drag, like you're just practicing stuff and it's really hard. But in order to grow, you have to go through, all that hardship and that practice and burning that midnight oil. Would you mind just like saying a few words about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I could talk about this for hours. But it's a very challenging business to be in, the music industry, and you have to keep those two things separate. Unfortunately, you have to keep your creative mind and the business aspect separate in a lot of ways. And I'm very young. I still don't have a lot of experience with it, but kind of to the point that you said, I will say that you have to fail in order to get better. I mean, there's a million times that I fell on my face when I was in college, and luckily college is a good time to do that, but I never would have made the gains and this, if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for those learning from experiences. I think we're in a pretty interesting time now, obviously, with the cell phones and the way technology has gone. I mean, I may be one of, in that last generation that really grew up playing gigs. I mean, cutting my teeth in the bar, passing around the tip bucket, playing for hours and hours, in New Orleans, here in Greensboro and stuff like that. And it's just going to be interesting to see how the next wave, now paying your dues and cutting your teeth is, how many TikTok videos you got until you reach 10,000 followers or whatever. So it's just interesting. I feel lucky to have to have mentors who are older, guys who have really, especially in this, when it comes to music, you can't buy experience, and you can't, learning from guys who've done this their whole life, it is really special.
That's so well said, man. These are all things like I talk about a lot on my page. The power of mentorship. Basically failing your way to success, which means you're growing. You're not going to fail if you stay in your comfort zone. And a lot of like what you do is taking a chance. And you can hear it all. You can hear it all over this album. I mean, you guys, everything was executed amazingly well, man. And
right. And look, and we left the mistakes in there, man. I'm a big believer that, perfection is overrated. And I think that, people want, that's what I love about this record, is that it feels like you're sitting in the living room, hanging out with us. It's not quantized. It's not, mistakes are there. You don't have to look hard to find them.
I didn't hear any, man. I got to listen a little harder now. Hey, brother. Thank you, man. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of your afternoon with us, man. And I think I just can't wait to see you live, man. That's when you roll through New York, I'm there.
Oh man, my pleasure. You seem like a great guy, man. It was really nice talking to you.
Love it, man.